So without further ado, I just want to start off first, as is protocol, by thanking the grandmothers for being here today and for sharing their wisdom with us. I do want to offer you some tobacco for just being here today, and we really appreciate having you as always. We'll arrange for you to receive your tobacco after this event. And yeah, I'm going to welcome anybody in the room here today who's with us to run a smudge, do a smudge. If you have it with you there, you're more than welcome. I know we're going to do a smudge here right away, so I'll pass it over to Diane and Carly to open us with a prayer.
And Brenda's arrived as well. So
Brenda's and Brenda, wonderful. Yep, okay. Perfect. Okay.
Sanit anata nenisata nitsakusnahata sinachina kimo kumanis titatanata sanita sikunaha makutate teasut ina kimekuta lata kimo kumanis titatanata nenisata nitsakusnahata tisita konata sitana kimo kumanis titatanata inacho sanita etacho sanita sanita sitina kunaha katina and kutuna sanita sikunaha makutate siskas. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda or Diane, for that beautiful prayer. For opening us up in a good way as well. And we're really looking forward to hearing from all the grandmothers here really shortly, but that was a great way to start off this session and to move forward in a good way together. So for those of you who might not know me, my name is Brianna Morin. I'm a program officer of engagement and reconciliation with Communities Choose Well and the Alberta Recreation and Parks Association. And I'm really honored to be your facilitator for today. I do want to acknowledge that I'm calling in from Amiskwichiwaskayikin. I'm working on the pronunciation, but that's the Cree name for Edmonton here in Treaty 6 territory. And our team at ARPA and Choose Well, we're really split between Calgary and Edmonton. So we just like to acknowledge all of the First Nations, the Métis, and all of the people across this province who share a history and a deep connection with this land. And we really dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous peoples and the elders that we work with in spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So I want to thank you all again for joining us today. This is the Grandmother Circle, Protocol 101, everything you've wondered about and more. This is our feature event in our efforts to honor and celebrate Orange Shirt Day. You'll see a few of us here wearing our orange shirts. I hope some of you are too in the audience. But it's to honor this day, a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which is coming up on Friday, September 30th. Fun fact about this grandmother circle, it's now our 7th grandmother circle. I believe we started them in 2020, but I know the idea came from the wonderful elder Doreen, who I'm not sure will be able to make it today. She has a migraine, but we do want to acknowledge that this idea came from Doreen. She's a Blackfoot elder and the originator of these grandmother circles. So yeah, we're really grateful to be here. And as a reminder, just letting you know this session is being recorded. The plan was to hear Doreen say a little bit about the grandmother circles, but maybe she'll pop in later and we can hear more. Really, the inspiration for the topic of this grandmother circle is it came about with us at ARPA and Choose Well. We work with many Indigenous elders and communities, and because of that, we tend to get a lot of questions related to elders and the proper use of protocols. So we figured with the month of September being about reconciliation, this is the perfect time. We felt this would be the perfect time to ask the elders your most need-to-know questions. So thank you to those in the audience who've submitted their protocol-related questions already ahead of time. We have a really great list in place, and you're more than welcome to add your questions in the chat box here, or I think the Q&A box as well. And we'll try and get to those, but we do have a short time, so we'll see if we can, but we still acknowledge your comments and sharings in the chat box. So now I would like to just invite my colleague, Janet Naklia, who's the Director of People and Programs with ARPA, to introduce herself, as she will be helping with asking and monitoring the questions we have today. So Janet, over to you.
Thanks for that, Brianna. And I also want to thank the grandmothers and for Elder Diane for that blessing that they gave and the prayers that they, the good thoughts that they gave us today. As this is a webinar on protocol, one of the protocol pieces we'll start off with is that when you're in the presence of an elder who has done a prayer or blessings for you, that you should thank them. So I'm just doing that. I should also say that Nia Maskiki Kihu Esqueo, I am Medicine Eagle Woman. That name was given to me by Daryl Brass Sr. and Linda Brass. So it's always good to, when you have a spirit name, to acknowledge that. And Nistawanagok, Amskapitaki, and in Blackfoot, that is, I am also Southern Eagle Woman, which is a name that was given to me by John Chief Moon Sr. So it's really important to acknowledge those things, those places where we come from. And as Brianna is up north, I'm here in Wilkinsis in the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy. And I just acknowledge, there's many nations here, but I'd like to acknowledge the Blackfoot Confederacy in honor of the name that was given to me by John Chief Moon Sr., who's also Blackfoot. So it's really good. That storytelling piece, that acknowledgement piece of the land and where you come from is also very much a protocol piece. So thank you, Brianna. And I will add something to the story to honor Doreen, Elder Doreen Healy, who, it was 2020, where when these circles came about, they were originally meant to be circles in person, but COVID actually made them, catapulted them into the Zoom world, into the virtual world, which we are very grateful for because we have more opportunity now to share them with everybody else. And part of the idea too was to highlight the voices of our female, of our lady elders, for our grandmothers, our cookums and our grandmothers, and to highlight the power of the female perspective and the female voice. So a lot of that is where these circles come from, which is why they are the grandmother circles as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that piece and to thank the amazing ladies, the amazing grandmothers who are here with us today. And we'll talk a bit about what an elder is in a bit. So I'll turn it back to you, Brianna. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. I did want to add too, we've had the question of those who are male, can they come to these events? Of course you can. These events are for everybody because there are a lot of teachings that many people can use. It's not just for the grandmothers or the female perspective, it's for everybody. So I just want to acknowledge that. And we're really excited to have so many people here today. So yeah, I want to also thank our sponsors who we have with us today, which is Communities Choose Well and Alberta Blue Cross. Thank you guys for sponsoring this event. I'd like to toss it over to my colleague, Matt Liang with Communities Choose Well to say a few greetings before we get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. And likewise, I would like to extend just a wonderful thank you to our beautiful grandmothers for being here today and for providing us such beautiful prayers to start us off in a good way. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Liang. I am a program manager with ARPA, managing our Communities Choose Well program. Communities Choose Well is a program that really strives to provide resources and development opportunities for recreation folks around the province of Alberta who are doing work to advance healthy eating and active living. And it's really our privilege to be able to co-sponsor another grandmother circle. And it's really something that's very important to us as a program to be able to highlight and feature traditional ways of doing and knowing and learning as we do so. So we're really, really proud to be here today. And thank you, Brianna, for facilitating.
Thanks, Matt. Always good hearing from you. And then last but not least, we also have Ashley Bolduc from Alberta Blue Cross. So Ashley, please take it away with some words.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Bolduc, and I am pleased to be here on behalf of Alberta Blue Cross, where we are located on Treaty 6 territory. This event today is part of our joint effort to acknowledge Truth and Reconciliation, as well as September 30th, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I would like to thank our partner, Alberta Recreation and Parks Association, as well as the grandmothers for the opportunity to be part of this amazing event to further our knowledge on Indigenous culture and practices. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today, and thank you so much, Diane, for starting the day out with that beautiful prayer.
Thank you. Oh, I'm just got a little note here. There we go. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you, Alberta Blue Cross and Communities Choosewell, for your greetings. We're going to just move right to it. We want to get to the nitty gritty of why we're all here and hear from the grandmothers, AKA the stars of the show. I'm going to introduce them briefly, and then we'll get right into the questions here. So first, I would like to introduce Brenda Roland, who is a Métis elder in the making, and she is the Indigenous Integration Lead with Alberta Health Services out of Calgary. Brenda has been involved with ARPA in Choosewell for many years, having attended the Elders Culture Camp over the past 2 summers and the Indigenous gatherings with Choosewell. So welcome, Brenda. I don't know if people can see you right now, but I think they can. Give them a wave. Next up, I'd like to introduce Diane Mcginnis, who is a Blackfoot elder from Tsuut'ina Nation. She also attended the Elders Culture Camp this past summer. And what's really exciting is that today is her first time being part of the Grandmother Circle. So really excited to have you be a part of us, or be a part of this group today. So welcome, Diane. And then finally, I'd like to introduce Carly Kroshu, who is a Blackfoot ceremonialist and knowledge keeper. She's an entrepreneur and a proud mom of 2 young boys, and she is currently contracted with us at ARPA to help transition the Elders Knowledge Circle into a brand new nonprofit society. So welcome, Carly. As a reminder, I do just want to provide a little debrief of the format. So what we'll do is I'll prompt Janet to read the first question, and then I'll call out to an elder if they would like to answer. And a few elders are more than welcome to answer 1 or 2 questions at a time. So we'll just kind of alternate through the questions and see what we get. So let's start with our first question. Janet, what do we have for us today?
Thank you, Brianna. I should also say, just a quick correction is, I know Diane, you mentioned she's a Blackfoot elder. She's actually from Tsuut'ina, so she's a Tsuut'ina elder, just so it's not confusing in terms of your introduction, Brianna. So
yeah, I did. Yeah, she was from Tsuut'ina. I wrote that.
Yeah. So just a clarification that's where Elder Diane is from. So thank you. And Brenda, sorry, did you have a question? I saw your hand go up. Nope, you're just practicing. Okay. All right. So one of the questions that we often get is, who is an elder? How do I know who an elder is? Is it by age? Is it by experience? Where does this come from? And why are people a grandmother and not a grandmother? Because obviously we see a range of ages here in our grandmothers today. So what is going on there? So I think we'll turn it over to Diane first, and then I'll leave it back to you, Brianna. So Diana, who's an elder? What is this business about elders?
Okay, first of all, the word elder, that's an English word. In all of our first languages, we have a description of people who are identified, and the closest English word is elder. And so in Tsuut'ina, we're called like old people, which might be a little bit derogatory in English words, but in Tsuut'ina words, it's not. And so it means a person who has lived like many seasons, seasons meaning lots of things: birth, death, marriage, all of these events that happen to us in our lives. We lived through them. Sickness, like this pandemic. We've experienced a lot of historical trauma, but also historical. We've experienced healing as well. We're part of this generation now today of the older people is the generation who came back and or revitalized the cultural teachings of our peoples. And this is the description of an elder. Just for the sake of translation and English words, it's a person who's has lived experience. They lived experience either through ceremony, through culture, through language, through education even, and through traveling. Some people have traveled all over the world. They're considered elders. They really seen lots in the world. Like say, for example, the veterans who were combat veterans in, say, World War II or any of the other conflicts, which my dad was a veteran from World War II. So he's seen a lot, and a veteran has even different status than an elder. So for the modern day people, elder means an English word, which means a person who has life experience in many different ways. It could be finding medicine, using medicine, teaching, sharing, taking care of children. That's a real big one, is taking care of our own children, and always being a mentor for our people. That's what means to be an elder, and means to be called, when you're called upon to help as best you can, and always to be there, to be part of community. I'm Tsuut'ina, and I live Tsuut'ina Cree, and I've been born and raised at Tsuut'ina. My parents are both Tsuut'ina people, and yes, the Tsuut'ina territory is also in the same jurisdiction or territory as the Blackfoot Confederacy. The whole territory before treaty was Blackfoot Confederacy, and then after, we made treaty. We made treaty with the Blackfoot and Tsuut'ina and the Dakota, the Stonies, made treaty, and then so we all occupy certain parts of the territory. And so, but primarily, yes, it is Blackfoot territory. And the Dene came from way northern parts of Canada, and migrated even as far south as, say, Navajo Nation. So with the Dene people here at Tsuut'ina, there's only just a few. There's very small population here at Tsuut'ina, but we survived. Somehow we survived, and I'm sure it's because we were made alignments and were with the Blackfoot Confederacy. We were aligned with them in war and in everything. So thank you for your question. That's the best I can explain. I know we don't have a lot of time. I don't want to take up the whole time answering one question. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. No, that was really great. And I like the fact that you touched on that it's of lived experience. So that kind of makes me think about Carly, who's with us here, because she might be considered perhaps an elder, but she might be younger of age. So Carly, do you want to maybe share your perspective on what it means to be an elder?
Yeah, thanks for that, Diane. How I think of it is, so how I was raised, they would refer to me as a Gipidapuka. So that is understanding that you are raised by your grandparents. So I was raised by my grandparents, Reg and Rose Kroshu, and they raised me in a traditional sense. So when I entered the school age years, I did go to I went to a Western institution for my elementary education, but also I participated in a ceremony type education. So in Indigenous education, I was part of the Nipmuc Society. And as I went through my Western school years, I also went through my Indigenous school years as well. And when I moved to the city, when I was in about grade 5, my Indigenous education followed me. So with that beginning society, I was in other societies as well that I carried with me throughout my life. And with those societies, I was transferred certain things. So I was transferred songs, I was transferred artifacts, I was transferred certain things throughout my life. So as I moved through my life, gaining some knowledge, I'm not as knowledgeable as most of the elders that we work with, hopefully one day. But as I move through my life, I obtain all of this knowledge in the Indigenous worldview. So I guess you can look at it and say, I'm past the master level, approaching to my PhD. And Indigenous worldview is a way that you could parallel it, but it's because I was raised up that way. I was nurtured by my grandparents in a traditional sense, and within certain ceremonies, I am an elder. So within Nipmuc ceremony, I'm an elder. Within my tea dance ceremony, I'm going to become an elder. Within all these different societies, I am an elder. So when I speak today, it's coming from my perspective as the Western word of an elder, and I'm still gaining my knowledge, but I love, so my job is working with the elders and being able to parallel and create an organization for them. So I'm constantly learning from the elders that surround me, and I'm so thankful for everything that I've learned from this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Yeah, I'd imagine. It's a wealth of knowledge that you continuously get to learn. It's a really, really cool place to be in. Thank you for sharing. I might just open it up to Brenda if there's anything you'd like to add, as we have introduced you as an elder in the making. So maybe you have something else to add about that.
Well, I just want to thank Diane and Carly. That was so beautifully expressed. From a Métis perspective, it's kind of the same way. I mean, there aren't a lot of differences when we look at the traditional ways of being from a Métis perspective. So I've been very fortunate to learn from numerous elders. And many of you already know our figurehead, our main Métis elder, Edme Comstock. And so she has, I guess, she has determined that I am an elder. And so we go through the process of learning that and becoming that. I think one thing I like to add to what is an elder, so as you can see, it isn't about age, it's about knowledge, about understanding. It's the stories that are shared, it's the traditions that are shared, but it's also about validation and understanding, that when you're given this, or when you accept this path as an elder, this is a lifelong journey. This is not something that you just become for a little while and then move on. This is a decision that you're agreeing to as requested from those around you, because you don't call yourself an elder. And I have to tell you that it's taken me some time to fully accept within myself what that is, and or just the whole concept of becoming an elder. So it's taken years of recognizing, understanding, a little bit of pushing from Edme, all these things that are wrapped up in becoming an elder. And I really, I guess a big part of that is the validation, because I wasn't born into a traditional family as Carly was, and I don't live on the land as Diane and Carly do. It is a little bit different from a Métis perspective, because we are two bloods. We are part of Western and traditional, so we walk in two worlds. And so the importance of having an elder teach you and walk with you on that path is so valuable. So I feel very fortunate to be here and recognized as an elder. It's also it's a lot of responsibility, and I honor that, and I agreed to take that responsibility on. So I just wanted to share that piece. Thanks.
Thanks, Brenda. No, this was really great to get multiple perspectives and different ages, different stages of being an elder or becoming an elder. So thank you to all three of you for answering that question. We're going to move to the next question now, because we're 25 minutes in. we got more to touch on. So I'm going to ask one elder this time, and then I'll leave it up if you guys want to add more. I'm going to ask or get Janet to ask the question, and then we'll see which elder would like to answer. So Janet, feel free.
I'm ready. So this is a topic we hear about all the time. It's about tobacco and gifting. So the question is, I've heard from an elder that a gift of tobacco is well received when at a ceremony and making a request. Can you explain why tobacco and why this happens? And is another gift possible? Because there's tobacco for a request and there's general gifting. So who would like to answer this first?
I guess I can go.
All right.
Just speaking on my perspective. So as I was growing up in ceremony, I was always told and taught that you give what you can. So growing up, if you're going to, and it's about respect as well. So growing up and seeing in ceremony, people going to ceremony for help and asking for help, they give what they can. So in a way, we're giving tobacco because it's something that they use to make offering and to pray for you. So that's why it's a most fitting way, a most fitting item to give an elder, because you're offering them to the tobacco so that they can use it to say prayers for you. But growing up when we would have our ceremonies, people would just go and literally give what they could. It was food, or other people would pitch in and give money on their behalf. So it's all about giving what you can give and what you're willing to offer.
That was really
I can add to that a little bit,
Yeah.
if that's all right. So, and tobacco is one of our sacred medicines, right? And one of the teachings that came to me, oh, before I tell you this, I should say also, Janet, in recognition of what you were saying about given names, I was also given a name, Blackfoot name that I forgot to share. I'm sorry. Mutuiskok is my Blackfoot name, and that was given to me by Carly's grandparents, and it means pretty voice. And so what Reg told me was that my voice carries my spirit. So there are times that I'm not always I don't know. Sometimes I like to laugh and kid around a lot. So that has a lot to do with and I like to sing. And that's a lot to do with why I got that name. But something about the tobacco, one of the teachings that I received on that was that the tobacco, being that it is one of our sacred medicines, is what opens the door to those prayers, for those prayers to be heard. And when I pray with tobacco, if someone offers me tobacco, it's that person or that request that's in my mind, in my heart when I do that. And when you offer tobacco, what is your intention? Like, so important to understand your intention of what you're offering tobacco for. I guess that's kind of, unless someone else has a question around that, I think that kind of speaks for itself.
And so what I do as a follow-up question, because these are really questions that we get a lot. So is it okay, for example, to give a cigarette? If you have a cigarette, do elders prefer loose leaf? I know there is ceremonial tobacco we get from Mother Earth tobacco. We could share that resource later. But I guess going back to what Carly says, often it's what you have, like what is available to you and what matters to you in terms of getting it. But so I guess just maybe, Diane, do you want to just quickly, does it matter if it's is it loose leaf? Is it a cigarette? Sometimes you just ask the elder what they prefer. Like, what are your thoughts on that specific bit about?
just a quick response in thinking about our time is that one example is one of the elders here at Sutina. Someone approached him, my daughter actually, she approached him for prayers here at Sutina, and she brought him a whole package of cigarettes. And then when he accepted the tobacco, the cigarettes, he said, you know, he said, when you come and ask for prayers, he said, you only just need to give me one cigarette. He said, because all I'm going to do, I'm going to pray with this tobacco and I'm going to put it back on the ground to our grandfathers and our grandmothers. They're going to pick it up. See, the spirits, they pick up the spirit of that tobacco. That's what they're picking up. They're not going to pick up the actual physical tobacco. And that's what they're going to take. So he said, even one cigarette is good. He said, you don't have to bring me a whole, this is cost a lots of money. I don't smoke. And he said, and I'm going to pray for you. And one tobacco cigarette is good. So that's just one story. That's one example. There's other examples, but because of time, you know, we need to maybe move on to the next question. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you all for sharing about tobacco. We had some good questions about that. So Janet, what's our next question?
Oh, I'm ready. And I have a shameless plug. I see that Elder Daryl Brass is joining us today as a participant and at our conference at ARPA happening in October. Check it out. Daryl, Elder Daryl is going to do a teaching on sacred tobacco and the teachings around tobacco. So that's something we hear so often about that we will do a session at a conference about it. Okay, here we go. So we often say, especially during this week, get involved, get out into community, do things. But we have questions like, all right, say a non-Indigenous person, or perhaps not even part of the community of whose territory you sit in traditional territory. The question is, can anyone just go to a powwow? And if I do go to a powwow, do I have to bring a gift? Do I give tobacco to someone? Like, what is it? What is this powwow? And can we all go to one? Because I'm sure there's many powwows happening. I know for a fact on Friday for National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So I'm going to throw this out to you, Brenda. Can anyone go to a powwow? What's going on?
Absolutely. Go to the powwow. Go enjoy the culture. Go enjoy being with the people, hearing the songs. Stop at the vendors. There's always so much creativity and artistry going on. Just be respectful. I've never taken a gift to the powwow. I don't know that I would do that, but different cultures do it differently. But I have enjoyed powwow and we do support it in all ways.
Thank you, Brenda. Would anyone else like to briefly touch on powwow?
I'll speak on this quickly. I dance powwow competitively all summer, kind of into the fall as well. And growing up, it was a place to go and to have fun. I think these days a lot of people confuse the aspect of powwow and kind of make it a sacred place. And personally, how I was raised and how I was taught, powwow isn't a sacred place. It's a place to go and to be proud of who you are and show your identity and participate with your family and friends. So a powwow isn't really, well, how I was taught. It's not really a sacred place. It's a place to go to create those connections. So, and also if you ask, I always say, ask the people who are from there what the protocol is for that, because it's different everywhere. From where I'm from would be completely different from where Diane's from. Even though we're Treaty 7 and we share the same territory, our powwows are completely different.
Thank you, Carly. Janet, are there any follow-up questions to powwow, or are we good to move to the next?
No, I think that is, so I guess the question was also, can they go uninvited? And the answer is yes. It's basically a community celebration, a place to go and have fun and round dance and do things. So the answer is go, check it out, be respectful. I love that, Brenda. Be respectful no matter where you go. if you don't know, ask. And just if you don't know anyone to ask, just generally watch what's happening around you, be aware of your surroundings, follow what others might be doing, and be respectful. So, but it is a good transition then, because we did, especially Carly, because there is some a confusion as to what is sacred and what is community events. So there was a question, and we'll get to the bits related to this, but someone asked, what's the difference between a pipe ceremony, like a powwow, and say a blanket ceremony? Because now we have blanket ceremonies that are completely different than actually a pipe ceremony. So who wants to address that first?
I'll take a chance at addressing that. A pipe ceremony is a ceremony. It's held by each like persons that carries a pipe. They're called pipe carriers. And like say there might be some people from the Stony Reserves or Tsuut'ina Reserve or the Blackfoot, like one of the 3 Blackfoot communities here in this area. There's Cree ceremonies too. And what I find is each one has its own protocol, just like what Carly said. It's true. The Cree protocol is different than the Blackfoot protocol. So depending on what area that people are in, we adhere to those protocols. Even though I'm from Tsuut'ina, I'm going to follow the Blackfoot protocol if I'm in Blackfoot territory, and vice versa. And it's just it's a common teaching that we have as children when we're growing up. And some of these teachings, we learn them like from our parents and our grandparents and our relatives, our other extended family relatives. This culture of the pipe, it's been with us since forever. So it's always been there. Some of the, like, I can't speak about the blanket ceremony because I don't know about the blanket ceremony except the one we do at the university, where we wrap the recent graduates with a blanket, and there's some protocol and ceremony involved with that. So I follow the Blackfoot protocol because they're primarily it's Blackfoot people. And so I follow their protocol, and we wrap up the people that graduated in a blanket. That's all I know about that ceremony. But the pipe is the most, I guess, the most sacred of ceremonies besides the Sundance and the other, like bundle ceremonies. The pipe is a very significant ceremony, and people have to really, if you don't know, you just ask. Just ask. If you're a woman, you ask a woman elder there. Ask a woman elder. A men's, they ask the men elders who are there, because there's different protocol for each one's, for the men's and for the women's, even where we sit when we go into a ceremony. So thank you.
And sorry, I'll just add to this question. Thank you, Diane, for that. Is like the blanket ceremony, I think they mean, is there are often, it's like an educational experience where you go and you hear the history of colonization and you stand on blankets. So it's actually like so a pipe ceremony is a very sacred event held by traditional knowledge keepers and elders. And often it can be a community event, but often it's an invited event. You're going to a pipe ceremony, like it's very specific for reasons. Where a powwow, a community could come, anyone could come. And then and then the actual blanket ceremony that they're talking about, it's confusing that it was even given the name ceremony, right, everyone? Why did they do that? It's an educational experience where you're immersed into like a 3-hour workshop where you could kind of experience colonization. So it's not sacred at all. It's the least sacred of all 3 of those things. But the other part of this too was smudging. So someone asked also then what's smudging. So I will turn this to you, Carly, because another shameless plug is that we do have a video in our Oral Knowledge Hub with Reg and Rose Kroshu, who Brenda mentioned. They have a video on what smudging is and why people smudge. But Carly, do you want to add to like that smudging piece? Because I know it's also very key in your family. And then Brenda, if you have anything about that big thing after, we'll go there next. So Carly.
Sorry, Janet, what was the question about smudging?
What is smudging?
Oh, what is smudging?
Yeah. What is this thing called
I
smudging?
guess I'll speak on my personal perspective. For me personally, me and my children, I have an almost 1-year-old. You might hear him in the back. His name's Niskan, and then my 7-year-old Knox. We smudge every day. We smudge when we wake up, we smudge when we go to bed, but also most importantly is I'm teaching my children about spirituality. So I'm teaching them about how to connect to Creator when they're feeling scared, because right now my eldest son is having a bit of anxiety. So when he's feeling anxious, I say, you pray, you smudge, you take off all of those bad feelings, all of that fear, and you put it back into the ground and you give it to Creator. He can hear you and he can see you and he can feel you through your prayers. So for us, for me and my children, my family, it's a direct connection for me to Creator. So he can give me and my children strength on our days or our challenges or whatever we're going through. And also being honest. It's a tool. I'm using Western terms, but it's a tool for honesty. So to create that honesty within my children as well and myself is when I'm praying, I make sure I'm honest and I say the things that are bothering me, maybe some things I regret throughout the day. Maybe I had a hard day and I yelled at my kid too loud or put him to bed early and I feel bad about it. It's about me being honest and ultimately just being a good person. It's what polices me in a sense. It's my connection that helps police me and get me to my goal of just being a good person.
I love that. Thank you, Carly. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that goes kind of hand in hand with perhaps our next question. I know it's going to be related about skirts and the protocol around that. So maybe I'll toss it over to Janet to move on to our next question.
All right, so Brenda, I give you a heads up. So many, and Diane spoke about this in terms of, talking to a female elder or knowing what protocol. We talk about ceremony and even powwows. So often you'll hear or the request for women to wear skirts. And so when should I be wearing a skirt? To what event and why is that? And as a non-Indigenous woman, which I am myself, should I then be also wearing a skirt to these ceremonies? And do I need to ask to do that? Or is that just assumed it's part of protocol? Skirts.
Well, I'll start with a little short, try and make it a short story because I know we're not going to have a lot of time left. But from my Western perspective, I had and earlier years, like maybe 40 years ago, I was very much what I called myself a feminist, and I would decide what I wore, when I wore it, and how I wore it. So as I continued my journey in life, I became very connected to my culture, my traditional way of being, and I learned from my elders, they were Ojibwe at that time, what it was about to wear a skirt, because I asked my elder, why do I have to wear a skirt? What is that about? How come I can't just wear it? And so she walked me through the importance of wearing a skirt and why. And the big why is because as women, we are so powerful. Like, we give birth, our power is endless, and it needs to be recognized. And a lot of this has to do not just with wearing a skirt, but also sitting cross-legged. So when I go into the sweat lodge, I am always in a skirt. I am always, even though it's the most uncomfortable for me, with my legs to the side, because I honor and respect that teaching. And I understand that if I don't wear a skirt, things can definitely go sideways. My power can be taken. it can be used against me. I don't want that to happen. So that's one of the teachings that I've had. And I know that there's several other teachings around the skirts, but it's very much about our power as women. And I think either Diane or Carly can probably add to that. Thanks.
Hi, I'll just jump in quickly as well. Thank you very much. That's really good teaching about the power of the woman. And as well, that's my understanding. And my mother was a real old lady. She was an old lady when she had us as kids, and she never ever in her life wore a pants. And she was always against us girls wearing pants. And she always tried to tell us to wear dresses. And the same reason why is because you're a woman. Do you need to know anything more than that? And she says, you're not a man, you're a woman. You wear a dress. So that's part of the reason why today in ceremonies it's expected that women wear dresses. Doesn't have to be a ribbon skirt, as long as it's a dress. Could be just a dress. It doesn't have to be a ribbon skirt. It means you're showing respect for yourself, for the other people around you, but especially the pipe. If there's a pipe there, that's what we're showing respect. It's a way of showing respect and conducting ourselves in a respectful way. And all she had to tell me was, because you're a woman, that's why you wear a dress. And she said, if God wanted you to be a man, you'd be a man. So these are some of the things. I worked with council for many years, and she was really strict about me wearing a dress when I worked with them. She says, you work with chief and council, the leadership, respect them and wear a dress. Don't try and be like a man. Don't try and be like that. So anyways, that's my teachings about dresses and wearing dresses. And it's true, we have to. And it's just about the same in every culture. Every culture wears like in indigenous people's ceremonies, I see that everyone wears dresses. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And so Carly, I'm going to throw you a tough one out because I love you so much. I do love you. Now, so what about then two-spirited and gender questioning? So how does that work in terms of ceremonial aspects and skirt wearing? Because that is a question that does come up, and it's something that within ceremony is dealt with. And I know each nation is different. So can I also say for everyone here, there's no pan-Indigenous answer to anything. Everything is different. Everyone has their own perspective. Ask the people where you are. But however, so insight to that, Carly, in terms of two-spirited, cultural, dressing, and that kind of thing.
So growing up, I have two-spirited aunts and uncles, and our protocol as Blackfoot people is different from others. So the best thing to do is to ask. I know Janet just said it, and it's so vague, but in order to respect the space that you're in, you have to ask what their protocol for that is. Because it's specific about gender roles within a cultural context. And you also, nobody wants to be disrespected. We don't want to disrespect others, and we can't disrespect those ceremonialists as well about how they go through those processes. So it's really, really important to ask. No question is a dumb question.
Yeah, that's a really good lesson. Don't be afraid to ask a question. It's better to ask than pretend like you know. So thank you guys for sharing that. We do have another question coming in, I think, about jewelry. And I know we're reaching our last 10 minutes together. So Janet, I'll throw it to you.
Thank you. So we did have a question. Obviously, I'm wearing these lovely earrings. They were made for me by Spike Eagle Speaker Jr. made me these. So I always wear them whenever I need good luck, especially in webinars. But the question is, so can non-Indigenous people wear jewelry, for example, that are made by Indigenous people, or clothing or hats without it being cultural appropriation? because we always hear, don't steal those ideas and don't, like, these are things that cultures respect. So can we actually do that? And we are coming up again to all these celebrations that are happening. So can we proudly wear our Indigenous made earrings or jewelry?
Okay, Carly, perfect.
I'll take this one. So I have a small business. It's called The Chief's Daughter. Interpret it how you will, and you can ask me about it at a later day. It's a great conversation starter. So I create these beadwork, these hats, and my slogan is creation for the generations. So bringing back those stories and making things that'll last a lifetime. So I get asked this question all the time, probably like once a day, honestly. And my answer is, of course you can wear Indigenous art. I actually encourage it, but you have to make sure that where you're getting your art from is authentic. Are you getting your art from an authentically Indigenous source? That's the only thing that I have a problem with. The other day, me and my grandma, we were at Lamley's, and she actually yesterday, and it was so funny because they had these earrings set up on this little like spindle thing. And my grandma asked the guy, she said, were those made in China? And the guy looked so embarrassed, and he like looked at her and he didn't even answer her. So you got to make sure if you are going to be wearing Indigenous art, Indigenous clothing, you make sure it's from a reliable, authentic Indigenous source. Because if you're not, there's appropriation connected to that.
I love that. And I would add to that and scope out some Indigenous artisan markets. They're becoming more and more popular now, which I appreciate. There's one out in Enoch, I know, that does happen for Edmonton folks. So keep an eye out for those, because a lot of Indigenous vendors are there trying to sell their authentic jewelry and art. So that's my little piece. Do we want to move to one more question before we wrap up?
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I think voice from the men. So we have voice from the men, and I probably should have went back to this one. So as a non-Indigenous man, are there certain things I should know about ceremony when I participate, about what I wear, all these pieces we've been talking about? Because obviously there's a lot of things about skirts. How do I operate as a non-Indigenous male in these situations? Oh, go on, Diane, you have an answer. I saw that hand going.
I do. I don't know if it's an answer, but it's a suggestion that the ceremonies that I participate in, mostly the men, they have a blanket, they carry a blanket, and they always keep that blanket with them, and they can wrap up themselves in that blanket as well. So it's good for a non-Indigenous man if he can make friends with an Indigenous person, another Indigenous man, and that could help him, and that could kind of advise him how to do this and how to wrap the blanket, where to get the blanket, what does the blanket, what's the significance of the blanket, etc., because I'm sure there's more. But I'm just saying, this is what I've seen when I go to ceremonies. I see the men, they always have a blanket. And moccasins, I see them have moccasins too. Those are the two things I see them have. And sometimes the ceremonial people, they have eagle fans, hey, they're ceremonial people. But the ordinary people that go there, I don't think they have eagle fans, but they have a blanket and they have moccasins. Those are the two things that I know. I don't know, maybe Carly or the other lady might know of some other significant information for like new people that are going to go to ceremonies. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. All right, well, we're closing in here. So I don't know, do we feel like we want to have one more question, Janet, or are we safe to kind of start wrapping it up? I'm sensing we can wrap it up because I know we do have a closing prayer on our way. So
yeah, I say we wrap it up. Maybe I would say the grandmothers, you want to have a closing. If there's one thing that people take away from this, this webinar today, what is that? I think that's a good one. And then we'll go into the closing, and I know we have a prayer coming up. So what's your last, if people leave this webinar, and we have had requests, I understand this is just a tiny dive into a deeper dive into more protocol questions, because we could go forever. So we will do that, but what's your biggest takeaway for everyone? We'll start with Brenda.
I guess my I think one of the main takeaways would be, do not be afraid to ask. Ensure that things are happening in the way they should be happening by being informed, and recognize that you're not expected to know the answers to all these questions. So every culture is quite different, or there are many differences and many similarities. So don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, that one's important. I appreciate that one. How about you, Carly? One key takeaway?
Let's go with Diane first.
Okay, Diane, up to you.
Hi. Yeah, I was just going to say to remember that protocol, again, is an English word. And if I was to translate that into Sitina, it just comes back out in English as the way how we do things. This is how we do things. And again, it's Sitina, and then the Blackfoot people will have their way of how they do things, the Stony people, the Cree people, whatever people, the Métis people, this is the way how we do things. So protocol is not written in stone anywhere. It's just a way of how people in that particular family or grouping or setting, that's the accepted norm of how they do things. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Wonderful. Brenda, Carly, we'll go to you quick.
I would say it's important to, if you get invited somewhere, go. If an Indigenous person is inviting you anywhere, you go. Not forcing you to, but it's a good opportunity for you to, it's like a segue into that environment and getting to know the way that we do things, the way that we live. And don't be shy. Do not be shy. You cannot be shy in an indigenous community. So go, if you're invited, even if you're hesitant, you go and you ask questions and don't be shy.
Thank you, Carly. Couldn't agree more. And it's a way that you can make friends. How would you want to make a friend? Go into it knowing that. I think that's a big key as well to making those relations. So just want to thank you, grandmothers and elders, for being here today and for answering all these questions. Like Janet said, we only reached the surface. I imagine there'll be other grandmother circles again, maybe touching on the deeper dive of things, but thank you to everyone too who came out today and took this time out of your lunch hour to sit down with us and listen and learn. And I hope this has inspired your reconciliation journey. So we're going to close here. We're going to welcome Brenda to close out with a prayer for us to all just go on with our days with a good way. Brenda.
And before we do that, grandmothers, I have gifts. We have gifts. Speaking of gifts, we do have gifts that we will give all of you. So I will find you in a non-creepy way and pass on your gifts from us as a thank you from ARPA for sharing your knowledge today. So thank you for that. And yes, Brenda, I see you're ready. So let's I welcome you for your final prayer.
Thanks. So you're sure it's going to be a non-creepy way, right?
No guarantees, Brenda. No guarantees.
No.
Thanks, Janet. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to pray in English because my Michif is still very poor. Though I am working on it, just saying. But I don't think I'm quite ready to say a whole prayer all the way through in Michif. So I'll say that in English. It's been an amazing hour. I'm so thankful to have been asked to participate, and so glad that everyone was able to be here. My understanding is that what I gather from this is that there is a great recognition and our culture is being honored by you being here. So thank you all very much for being here and being interested and caring about how we do things and what we do. So I'm just going to ask Creator to Creator, guide us on our way home, whatever path that is. Take us to a place of well-being and goodness and sharing our love and our joy with each other, sharing our culture, sharing our knowledge, sharing the opportunity to come together. And we really appreciate and are so grateful for the opportunity to meet in this very interesting and colorful way. So all the best to all and all my relations. Hey, hey.
All my relations. Thank you, Brenda. That was wonderful. That's a wrap for the grandmothers today. Thanks again, everybody. You are free to go. We'll have this video posted soon. We're going to get the recording to you, and make sure to check out our Oral Knowledge Hub for more videos from the elders. And we might see some of you at ARPA's conference this year, because we do have a reconciliation stream coming up with a Blackfoot tea dance to kick it off. So thank you, everybody. Reach out if you have any questions at all, and we'll see you next time.